But first, Wimbledon starts tomorrow, with organisers saying that they are reinforcing security to Just Stop oil protesters from disrupting play. The Lawn Tennis Association says it won't tell players how to react if protesters invade the court, but it does have, it says, specially trained staff to deal with any problems. The warning comes after Just Stop Oil protesters raided the pitch at Lord's and interrupted play on Wednesday in the second test for the Ashes. Did you see that? Donny Bairstow literally picking up one of the protesters and carrying him off the cricket pitch. Meanwhile, 7 Just Stop Oil protesters were arrested at London Pride yesterday. Before the parade started, LGBTQ+ Just Stop Oil members called on Pride to stop accepting sponsorship money from high-polluting industries, their words, not mine, by stopping the movement of a float sponsored by Coca-Cola. The Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, says the group tactics are beginning to backfire.
And I think it's right that the organisation should be allowed to get sponsors from various walks of life. They've done their due diligence. I'm not sure how stopping the parade taking place either supports, LGBTQI+ rights or encourages more people to join the campaign that we should be tackling climate change far more urgently.
So there he is, Sadiq Khan, saying that he doesn't believe that Just Stop Oil's protests this summer at various high-profile events will win over people to their cause. He says that Pride did its due diligence. Interesting, from a mayor who has made as a central plank of his tenure cleaning up the environment and cleaning up London's air. There is no doubt that we are in a climate crisis, so my question to you this hour: do you support Just Stop Oil's summer of disruption, or is it beginning to backfire? Do you support Just Stop Oil's summer of disruption, or do you think it is beginning to backfire? Call 0345 6060 973. The lines are open now. This week has been a big week for the climate. We saw the Foreign Office Minister, Zach Goldsmith, announce his resignation over what he described as the government's, quote, apathy towards the environment. It should be said that he had been named the day before in the second Privileges Committee report as somebody who'd been undermining its work. Meanwhile, marine scientists have warned that parts of the North Sea are experiencing what they are calling a Category 4 marine heatwave. They say it's so extreme that it threatens life within our seas and oceans. Meanwhile, climate campaigners say that despite the government's revamped strategy to tackle climate change, do you remember that big announcement in March? The UK could still miss legally binding requirements to reach net zero emissions by 2050, and that its commitment under the Paris Agreement to plan cut emissions by 68% by 2030 compared to 1990 levels will also go down the Swanee. So my question to you: do you believe that Just Stop Oil have got it right? Do you think the summer of protests at some of our highest profile events are winning over your support? Or do you think it's alienating people? 0345 6060 973. I'm very pleased to say that to start the conversation, I'm joined by Emma Brown, Just Stop Oil spokesperson, who is on the line now. Hi, Emma. You there?
Oh, hi, Sangita. Thank you for having me on the programme and for introducing me and alongside all of those climate catastrophes and the government's own failings. That's something that I never usually get to hear. So thank you.
You're welcome. You should listen to this programme more, Emma. Let's catch up with events yesterday. 7 of your number arrested. Have they all been released?
Yeah, they've been released this morning. Yeah.
I mean, you heard the Mayor of London there saying that he felt that your tactics have begun to backfire. In his words, he says that Pride did its due diligence and that you had made a mistake by trying to stop the float moving. What's your response to that?
I think I'm just quite tired of hearing that what we're doing is backfiring. I mean, every other political party in the UK now supports our demand. Increasing numbers of public figures are coming out in support of our demand. So I really don't see where the evidence is that our protests are in any way causing people to become less engaged in this issue, less aware that the government are ploughing on with genocidal new oil and gas licenses. I don't see the evidence of that. And I do think that when we're talking about Pride, obviously Pride is a protest. All the supporters of Just Stop Oil that were involved today, even myself, we are queer. And if you saw the action, it was people dressed in the most flamboyant outfits, spraying pink paint from a golden fire extinguisher. I don't know how you can get more pride than that.
I suppose the point is that they're joining in with the Pride Parade rather than trying to stop it, right? You used the phrase just there,
trying to
genocidal.
stop it. It wasn't trying to stop it, Sangita. There's a difference between disrupting and making a scene and stopping something. And if we look at, for example, outrage and Peter Tatchell and the non-violent civil disobedience in the 1980s in the UK, which put massive pressure and achieved their aims of speeding up change for gay rights in the UK, they disrupted the Archbishop of Canterbury's Easter service. Do you not think that politicians at the time, that media people at the time were saying that was putting people off? They did mass kiss-ins. Do you not think that would have been saying, oh, that's counterproductive, that's putting people off? You know, this is what works.
It's interesting, Emma, because we have this conversation with some regularity here on LBC, which you'll be aware of. And often people will ring in and they will say, look, we have every sympathy with Just Stop Oil's position on the environment, which is that we are facing what you have described as a climate catastrophe. They may not go as far as to describe oil and gas licenses as genocidal as you just have. But what they will say is that, for example, if you were to go along and disrupt the tennis tomorrow at Wimbledon, what you're doing is stopping hardworking people who've paid an awful lot of money, some of them may well have saved through the year to buy a ticket there, from enjoying a bit of summer sport. You'll also be disrupting world-class tennis players from doing the job that they are being paid to do, which is to play tennis. It's not just a sporting event. And they feel frustrated and tired by having their ordinary lives disrupted. And they find what they would prefer, for example, might be for Just Stop Oil to follow the example of Extinction Rebellion, who have withdrawn from the sort of disruptive protests that Just Stop Oil are still participating in. Do you have sympathy with that?
I completely have sympathy. It's really messy and inconvenient protest. Just in the same way as people going on strike in hospitals, in schools, in our rail and transport systems going on strike is incredibly inconvenient for working people. But collectively, it's the only way we have power is to disrupt business as usual and to make our voices heard. And I think when we're looking at why we're disrupting Pride, it's not because we don't love queer culture. It's because we do love queer culture. And what we're really trying to push organizations towards is to come out, for Pride to come out, pardon the pun, against new oil and gas. Because this is the most intersectional issue, Sangita. You know, tennis is affected by... Because tennis
what do you mean by intersectional?
I mean, this massively increases injustice in every area. It affects the poorest. It affects the most marginalized people first and worst, whether that's countries in the global south that have done the least to cause this crisis and that are already suffering the worst effects, whether that's people in this country that are suffering from food inflation and energy prices soaring, which is just benefiting the oil and gas profiteers. You know, this is an incredibly intersectional issue because just like the cricket, the Australian cricket players, they understood why we were doing it because cricket is incredibly affected by climate change, just as tennis is, you know.
I understand what you're saying, Emma, but just a couple of things, because there's been some criticism of the targets that you've chosen. If you were, for example, barricading yourselves to the gates of ExxonMobil, that might make more sense because it's directly related to what it is that you're trying to achieve. But when, for example, protesters turn up at the Chelsea Flower Show, where people are rather environmentally minded, in my experience, or somewhere like the Ashes that is moving towards green energy to power the cricket ground, or even Glastonbury, again, where you will often find people who are hugely sympathetic to your cause. When these kinds of disruptions take place at those targets, surely you can see why that might backfire, because number one, you're disrupting the daily lives of the people who you've already won over, and it doesn't really make very much sense. And then secondly, you're ignoring the targets that perhaps you should be aiming at.
Thank you so much for asking that question, Sangita, because I never get a chance to talk about this. We targeted and blockaded oil and gas infrastructure in April last year. That I have friends that are 19, 20 years old that were chained to pipes in oil refineries, blocking the flow of oil for days after days after days, staying up there for 60 hours. And did it get media attention? No. There is no point doing a protest if nobody sees it, Sangita. And now the effect of those direct actions against the companies responsible, causing material disruption and the loss of profits to those companies, which of course is a valid way of protesting. The effect of that was injunctions, Sangita, injunctions that meant that private companies can take out extra laws that mean that people then are sent to prison for years at a time and are prone to have all of their assets seized. So there is a reason why we have chosen to focus our energy, because if the
understood, to get attention, I get it. Emma, final question.
In the public sphere.
Final question, because we've been beaten by time. Final question, because we're being beaten by time. So a brief answer, if you would. You're right. So by targeting these high-profile events, you are getting press attention. But is there a danger that instead of talking about the things that I outlined, so for example, marine scientists warning that parts of the North Sea are experiencing a heat wave, what we actually end up talking about are your tactics and whether or not, for example, you've targeted the right place, or how disruptive they are, or allowing people to express how cross they are, that they don't feel that you're understanding that they have day-to-day things they need to get done. For example, getting to work, to pay the bills.
So we do this to be able to get onto, to both put more pressure on the government and on organisations. If organisations come out against oil and gas, we will not target them. Whether they are, the British Medical Association has come out against oil and gas. There is no reason why other organisations can't do it too, because this is a human rights issue. And it's up to journalists, it's up to the media to decide what they use this airtime for. It's really up to them to decide. We are ordinary people. We are doing what we can. We are putting our liberty on the line to get this raised up the political agenda and up the media agenda. And that is all we can do. We are not in control of the press. Obviously, 80% of the press is owned by a few billionaires. We are up against an incredibly hostile media mostly. I do appreciate how much balance you provided at the beginning of the programme. But in general, we are against a government which is increasing police powers, which is increasing the ramifications for protesters. And I really want to emphasize that there is nothing new about these tactics. You can talk about them and go on and on about them, but there is nothing new about them. The only thing that is new are these laws. That is what is new.
Understood. Emma Brown, Just Stop Oil spokesperson, thank you very much indeed for joining me this afternoon. It's much appreciated. You heard Emma there saying that actually they're going to continue with their protest because they believe this is the way to keep climate change in the news. Do you agree? Do you believe that their tactics are the right ones? And if so, why? And if not, why not? 0345 6060 973. I'm Sangita Myska. This is LBC.